are these people?
We've got the unprovoked attack. Now, I decided I want to lean on Indie Media Award honoree Alan MacLeod from Minpress News here for this one. That in the past 5 days, Israel has started a war with Iran, massacred starving Gazans waiting for food. They bombed Lebanon.
Yep.
They bombed Syria. They carried out a naval attack on the port of Yemen. I didn't even hear about that. And then they also kidnapped, quote unquote, the Greta Thunberg, and then sent her back to Sweden, and nothing happened to her, and she became a celebrity darling. And I don't even really want to necessarily talk about the flotilla, except that it seems that the people that were on it, for the most part, got the celebrity treatment, while nothing fundamentally changed, and they tried to make a statement, which we all knew, which was that Israel was going to block any aid that was going in, that it was going to be woefully insufficient. And I believe Thiago Avila is still sitting in an Israeli prison right now because he wouldn't sign anything. If I'm correct, somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but...
How dare you?
What about the other lady? Isn't she also there? Still?
No.
Stuff?
She did not sign, but they deported her to France. She was a member of the European Parliament. Gotcha. I believe she was a delegation from European Parliament to France. So that's what Alan had to say. But Sam Husseini actually shared Fiorella's video, 9 seconds, about smoke now in Tehran as Israel went and struck the capital. This after Israel struck Lebanon. Okay, we wait for the West, of course, to blame Iran like they always do, right?
Yeah.
You can
see the smoke.
Yeah.
Sam Husseini points out that last September, as Netanyahu was at the UN and isolated, he ordered the assassination of Nasrallah. Today, the UN voted with 149 yes to demand Israel abide by international law, so it bombed Iran. This is how Israel responds to international law and decency. Oh, okay. Jimmy, thank you for letting me know that Thiago is actually free. Good to know that they only held him prisoner and threatened him with solitary confinement. But thank you for letting me know, because I didn't see that. I wanted to bring an article from another Indie Media Award honoree who you don't see very much, but he's been more active lately, Gordon Dimmack, friend of the show. Reef and I did an interview with him on INN News, about a year and a half ago already. And he was on AM Wake Up pretty recently. You can check that out with Pasta and Steve on an episode of AM Wake Up about a month and a half or 2 months ago. That was really good. But he wrote an article the other day about how Trump and Iran are nukes, the path to peace in the Middle East. Right, he's updated this several times already. So he says yesterday morning, the IAEA announced that Iran appears to be enriching uranium at previously undeclared facilities. If true, it would mark the first time in 20 years that they've done this, which would potentially be a breach of the nuclear deal. Cue the headlines. Iran's on the path to a nuclear weapon. We've all heard this before, right? I remember hearing Israeli leaders warning about an Iranian bomb back in the early 80s. We, again, talked about this about 6 weeks ago, all the times that Bibi's cried wolf. Every few years, there's another alarm bell, another prediction, and yet no bomb. So why am I talking about it now? Well, timing is everything. And for Netanyahu, timing is survival. As soon as the war in Gaza ends, his political shield vanishes. He's facing corruption charges. He knows it. Everyone knows it. If this war stops, he's either out of office or on trial or both. His only way forward is to keep the war going. And now we know how he plans to do it, escalate to war with Iran. So he says yesterday, just before Netanyahu ordered airstrikes on Iran, Iran had begun releasing documents that it claims to have hacked from Israeli nuclear research centers, which potentially, including the material leaked to the Sorek facility. While the IAEA has yet to authenticate the files, the timing is impossible to ignore. These leaks suggest that Israel's undeclared nuclear arsenal and the double standards surrounding it are finally being dragged out into the open. And there's a link in his article to the alleged documents, and I believe Fiorella also tweeted them out. There's four images. It also raises serious questions about the IAEA's role. It's worth remembering that Israel has never signed the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty and isn't subject to full inspections. But Iran is. So that means that the IAEA can publicly condemn Iran, but not Israel, even though Israel is the only nuclear-armed state in the region. Huh. That's not oversight. It's a loophole by design.
Nope.
If Netanyahu can launch airstrikes and then point to the IAEA report as justification, was the report a neutral finding, or was it a pretext prepared for a war already in motion? The IAEA's silence on Israel's own stockpile only reinforces the suspicion that this isn't impartial monitoring, but nuclear policing written in Tel Aviv. Overnight, Israel finally launched the airstrikes on Iranian territory that had been warned of for days. Netanyahu, that guy, confirmed that they were a direct response to the IAEA report accusing Iran of breaching nuclear protocol. Huh. So they're allowed to bomb people as a response to a report? Iran responded by launching over 100 drones, which was likely just the first wave. The U.S. says it wasn't involved. Of course it wasn't. It was just their planes, their weapons, their regional radar systems. Reports from multiple sources suggest that both U.S. and U.K. warplanes were scrambled to shoot down Iranian drones. So, what was that? Hit that again?
Wasn't me.
So while Washington denies pulling the trigger, Israel clearly knew that they'd be shielded. It wasn't me. This was never going to be a fair fight. And now we're learning that the strikes may have killed and did kill several senior IRGC officials. If confirmed, that alone could provoke a sustained Iranian retaliation. The market certainly believed it because Brent crude oil spiked dramatically after the strikes, jumping from $70 to over $78 a barrel in hours. That's not good. That means I hope everybody filled up their tanks this weekend. But the story didn't begin with missiles. It started with leaks. Iran claims to have hacked and acquired Israeli nuclear documents, threatening to release them. The authenticity, still being verified, but they're being posted and the symbolism is clear. Iran is calling Israel's nuclear bluff, and now the bombs are falling. So where does it go from here? Again, we're reading an article for those who are just joining by Indie Media Award honoree Gordon Dimmack about the assessment from the other day about what happened through Friday. Iran has long warned that it could target oil infrastructure in the Gulf. And if that happens, we're not just looking at war, we're looking at a global economic crisis. And while all eyes are fixed on Iran, let's not forget Israel cut Gaza's internet just before the strikes began. Also timing. We're now seeing images of entire Gaza districts on fire. No coverage, no live feeds, no accountability. What else has happened there while the world looked away and the lights were turned off? Meanwhile, U.S. President Donald Trump has issued his own threat to Iran. Make a deal or there will be nothing left. And even more brutal attacks are planned if Iran doesn't agree. It sounds a lot like a mob boss who quotes one message: this isn't negotiation, it's nuclear blackmail. Trump's trying to make him an offer he can't refuse. This is mafia politics. Drones and diplomacy hand in hand. Israel bombs, Trump threatens, and Iran is told to crawl to the table in Qatar this weekend and sign. According to Axios, two Israeli officials claimed Trump was only pretending to oppose Israeli strikes on Iran in public. Behind the scenes, they say he was fully aligned. It wasn't opposition. It was theater. Go figure from an Emmy Award-winning WWE Hall of Fame heel. Huh. No way.
Yep.
Trump's newly appointed U.S. ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee, said that he had to take shelter 5 times during the overnight Iranian response. And yet, earlier this week, Huckabee declared that the U.S. no longer supports a Palestinian state as a policy objective, suggesting instead that it could be created somewhere else in the Middle East. Why wasn't that story reported on at all? The U.S. ambassador to Israel said, we do not believe in a two-state solution. We believe in a one-state, Israel-led only solution. What? And nobody said a word.
But then also taking someone else's land to give to the Palestinians. It's just a cycle of bullshit.
And that's going to be Egypt. We know this. But there's no plan.
Yeah.
We covered that a year plus ago. There is no plan for the Palestinian people. Their plan is to wipe them out completely and drive them into the sea.
Which is why every Zionist, like, for months and months was like, well, why won't any other Arab countries take them?
Right.
Yeah, we know
There's
why.
23 other Muslim countries. Yes, but A, it's not their land. And if they do take them in, that's acknowledging and basically consenting that it's okay that the U.S. and Israel stole that land.
And how many of those Muslim countries is Israel trying to take?
Yep.
You know? Like,
part of Syria, part of Lebanon. Eventually, the Greater Israel Project includes part of Saudi Arabia, all of Jordan, part of Egypt, and part of Iraq.
If they decide it stops there, which I doubt it. You know? I think world domination, Pinky. Right. At this point.
I don't think so. I think that they want to restore that. And once they get there, maybe then whoever genocidal lunatic is running it then will decide that they want more than that, maybe. But right now, the patch is on the fucking uniforms. That's what they want. That's their plan. And they'll stop there for now. All right. Open Secrets data shows that pro-Israel donors gave thousands to Huckabee during his presidential runs, and his own Huck PAC, Jesus Christ, hauled in $11 million in 2024. All right. Yeah, it might as well be Hawk 2 with the way that it's just spitting and blowing Israel. Funneled into Republicans tied to Israel's agenda. It's another way to funnel Israel money through an American and toward Congress people and buy off that agenda. This isn't mere diplomacy. It's a network of political influence reinforcing U.S.-Israel policy coordination at every turn. And there's a fucking ambassador who also, again, ran for president and somehow is still allowed to have a PAC? Wow. There's no laws anymore, and there's no cops on the beat or anyone to prosecute any of this shit. They're trying, but it's getting thrown out. You got Trump-friendly judges. It's a crazy fucking time. All right? So much for Trump being anti-war and putting a stop to those stupid wars in the Middle East, eh, MAGA? Right? With all this in mind, I have to ask an uncomfortable question. Are nukes the path to peace in the Middle East? Mutually assured destruction is what he's talking about. Fiorella had a post about that today. Right now, it looks like the only way to survive is to have them. If you don't, you get bombed, blackmailed, and blockaded. If you do, suddenly the world listens. Although I don't think that anybody's really listening in North Korea. So I kind of disagree there. Although we don't know. There's no way in hell that any of this would happen if these countries knew Iran had nuclear weapons. Israel has them, though, allegedly. But yes, they do. And that nuclear arsenal is what gives them the power to dominate the region, along with the support of Western powers. It's the support of Western powers that really gives them that power. This has allowed Israel to commit heinous crimes on the Palestinians and bomb its neighbors with almost impunity in ways that future generations will study as one of the darkest periods in history. If peace is ever going to be possible in the Middle East, it can't be built on mafia threats and nuclear hypocrisy. It has to start with justice. with equal rules, with human rights that apply to everyone, Israeli, Iranian, and Palestinian alike. Until then, this doesn't look like peace. It looks like war. And damn, that's a good one by our brother Gordon. And I have a bunch more here. First of all, so we know that there was a sneak attack or an attack, an unprovoked attack of Iran and Tehran by Israel, in which they murdered IRGC top generals. And according to Matt Kennard, Netanyahu's presidential plane Wing of Zion took off from Tel Aviv that morning at 11:22 local time, and then landed in Athens, Greece. So he launched strikes against Iran and then ran the fuck away because he knew that the bombs were going to start flying back at Israel. Pussy. Right? This is the path, the flight path of the plane. Shout out to Matt Kennard. Again, another Indie Media Award honoree from both Declassified and on his own as a journalist. I mean, awesome stuff. So my question here, and I quote tweeted that and say, why would Netanyahu flee Israel after launching attacks on Israel? What a coward. When will he be arrested for war crimes? He ordered another unprovoked attack on a sovereign country after warning everyone he was going to do it. What's it going to take? That's the third one. He's attacked Syria unprovoked. He attacked Lebanon unprovoked. You can call Hezbollah provocation, but Hezbollah did not bomb Israel. All right? And now he's doing it to Iran. But Iran fucked around. Okay, so this is a Zei Squirrel thread that I thought was really good. So I decided to bring this one too. Israel has decided to assassinate Iran's supreme leader Ali Khamenei to try to cause total state collapse. Unless Iran establishes deterrence in the very short term by striking both Israeli and U.S. assets in the region and eliminating top figures in the Israeli regime, they will proceed. The U.S. and Israel did not launch this war to try to eliminate the nuclear sites. They know they can't. They're too well protected and dispersed, and any damage can be reconstituted in the short term. They launched it to cause total state collapse in Iran, beginning in phases. The first phase was to eliminate the top military and IRGC leaders while also going after scientists and mass killing civilians in the process. They did the same thing in Lebanon, by the way. This would create the false impression that they're still somewhat restrained and focused only on military and nuclear targets. Even though the first casualty was a child in Tehran. That's weird. Okay, better. After taking what they expect to be a similarly constrained response from Iran, they will see that as confirmation that Iran will not adhere to its own stated red lines and is still afraid of meeting Israel at the same level of escalation. This is their calculation. That is their green light then to proceed to the next phase, which is to target and kill top political leaders, including Khamenei. Their hope isn't to replace the current government and state with some rehash of the monarchist, Zionist, fascist through his failed son. They know there is no base of support for that inside the country. Their hope is to do another Libya and Syria, unleash proxy forces that they fund and arm together with the Gulf Arab Shield puppet regimes and NATO, Erdogan, and turn it into a spiral of death and chaos, a concocted civil war, quote unquote, where Iranians are paid and armed by the CIA and Mossad to kill Iranians. That's what's happening in Syria right now with Jalani.
Yeah.
The MEK and other such proxy forces have already been trained and prepared and are ready to be activated. They'll begin with car bombings and terrorist attacks, mass killing civilians. Quote-unquote ISIS will reappear again and do its typical job for their CIA Mossad masters. Because notice that ISIS doesn't attack Western targets, they attack Muslims. The U.S. and Israel decided to launch this war before Trump was elected, and it has the full and total support of the entire U.S. military, intelligence, industrial complex, and the media and political class, both Republicans and Democrats. And it would have also happened if Kamala Harris won the election. And she's got receipts about that too.
Yep.
They see Iran and the axis of resistance and its allies with Russia and China as the main obstacle to full and total Zionist U.S., NATO, Israeli imperial hegemony in the region, and by extension, the world, as they twist their mustaches. And they want to destroy it, as it is the only one that, unlike Russia and China, does not have a nuclear deterrent, and they want to get to it before it obtains it. This is an existential war of survival, not just for the Iranian state, but for Iran as a nation. If this project succeeds, the country will be balkanized, ethnic divisions will be stirred by foreign actors, CIA and Mossad and the Gulf puppets will fund and arm dozens of proxy death and rape squads roaming their fiefdoms. Tens of millions of lives will be destroyed. Everything must be done to prevent this. Iran has the weapons to do so. It has the capacity to do so. It's only a question of will. Does it have the will to do what it takes to prevent the mass destruction of their own people and nation? Squirrel certainly hopes it does. We must all hope it does. Saeed Mohammed Morandi was out there saying, look, these were all the old missiles that they sent, and they did the damage that they did.
Mm-hmm.
If they send the new stuff, boy.
So David Miller says this is completely correct. The Islamic Republic must urgently learn from events in Lebanon and Syria. Any missile silos and other weapons that are not used in the coming days will be destroyed. Miller says, use it or lose it.
Right. Continuing, the Squirrel says all of this goes back to the assassination of Nasrallah. As Sam Husseini had mentioned earlier, Israel had the ability to assassinate him whenever it wanted. That's not the question. Iran can assassinate Netanyahu if it wants. Ukraine can assassinate Putin. Putin can assassinate Zelensky. Assassinations are not the problem. Every state with a barely competent intelligence has the capacity to assassinate anyone. It's a question of deterrence. The reason Israel did not assassinate Nasrallah is because, as Gallant later came out and admitted, because they were deathly afraid of the response by Hezbollah and Iran. They thought it would lead to such a significant response, not just in terms of a missile strike on Israeli territory hitting military infrastructure, but assassinations of top Israeli officials, that they didn't go ahead with it. Then slowly but surely, the deterrence that Iran had established was broken down. Let's look at the timeline. Last April 1st, Israel attacks Iran's embassy, killing many. On the 13th of April, Iran responds with Operation True Promise 1, a symbolic pre-signaled strike. No deaths, just some limited material damage. May 19th, Israel kills Iran's president, Ibrahim Raisi, and the foreign minister, Amir Abdullahian. God, terrible. Iran responds by covering it up and going along with the lie that it was just an accident so it could avoid having to retaliate at all. Israeli officials were openly gloating about these killings, and it's an open secret in intel circles that they were assassinated. July 30th, Israel kills top Hezbollah military official, Fuad Shakur. July 31st, Israel kills Hamas leader Haniyeh and does it in Tehran itself. Iran then vowed they would retaliate, but Genocide Joe and Blinken began the fake diplomacy propaganda that Trump and Witkoff also initiated ahead of the current war, saying they would get a permanent ceasefire in Gaza as long as they didn't retaliate. 17th, 18th of September last year, Israel does its terrorist pager attack in Lebanon, killing and blinding many, including toddlers, children, and hospital workers. Already before this, they'd already begun bombing Beirut, which Hezbollah and Nasrallah said was a red line. Israel saw all of this as confirmation, all right, that there would be no retaliation by Iran and Hezbollah of the same kind, meaning the direct targeting and mass killing of top Israeli officials and any human shields who they happen to be hiding amongst at the time. Because if Israel doesn't give a fuck, why should Iran? Apparently they did. This was the green light to go ahead with the assassination of Nasrallah on September 27th. Now, the answer of why not is because the U.S. would also then come down on Iran. By that point, it was already too late. All of Iran and the broader axis of resistance's deterrence capacity had already been totally shattered. They kept saying in words, "We will strike you at least as hard as you struck us, if not harder." Then they kept not following through on their own stated red lines. Right. Nasrallah's assassination was when the U.S. and Israel knew that the war on Iran they had already wanted to launch all along was now ready to go in the short term within a year. Iran then did retaliate to all this on October 1st, Operation True Promise 2, which actually did do some significant damage, although the Western media class deliberately lies about this, but it was limited to military infrastructure. It didn't meet the same level of the Israeli attacks, not even close. No top Israeli officials were eliminated, no targeted assassinations, no human shields that they were hiding amongst were taken out. All deterrence was completely lost at this point. So, mutually assured destruction was a thing in the 60s that kept us from allegedly going to war with Russia. The mutually assured destruction disappeared. Just think of it from the U.S.-Israeli perspective. You killed Nasrallah, the main leader of the Axis of Resistance, alongside Khomeini himself, and the only cost you had to bear was some material damage. And not even to U.S., to Israeli stuff. Why would they happily not take that exchange? Of course they would. They love that exchange ratio. They would take that deal any day. It's like the perfect gift to them. And now they're coming in for the final kill. With the exact same standard they've been applying all this time, beginning with the assassination of top military and IRGC officials and scientists and any civilians who may be around them. Taking hits that consist primarily of material damage, which they love. That's a perfect exchange for them because it allows them to spend money to rebuild it on their defense contractors. Then they move on to the next phase, murdering the supreme leader of Iran and the Axis of Resistance itself. The only way to stop this now is to break this cycle. And the only way this can be done is by hitting them and doing minimally the same damage to them that was done by them, and ideally going beyond that, in fact, far beyond that. You have to look completely insane and unpredictable. You have to come over as totally irrational, capable of destroying the entire region if necessary. In other words, you have to make them fear you, just as the genocidal Israeli death cult and U.S. have done for themselves. First, eliminate, this is not my idea. This is the Zei Squirrel writing this. Do not take our channel down for doing this. I am reading somebody's plan on how Iran would retaliate materially so that they actually would challenge what Israel is doing. First, eliminate top Israeli military and political officials. Any human shields they're hiding amongst with them. It's not a matter of being able to. Of course, Iran is able to. It's a question of will. Second, target U.S. and military assets everywhere in the region. And not just infrastructure, not just buildings. It can't just be buildings. Third, close the Strait of Hormuz and begin striking oil fields in the Arab Shield Gulf puppet regimes. All of this.
That's a tough bit.
Well, they've got to attack Qatar. All of this has to be done.
And Saudis and UAE and
all this has to be done, and then the scale can be increased if deterrence has not yet been established and the war continues. This is the only way that Zei Squirrel sees to bring the genocidal Israeli and U.S. death cults to bring them to heel, and tens of millions of lives can be saved. Maybe with hypersonic missiles.
hypersonic. Did you see that? Oh my God.
If that's even a hypersonic,
I don't know if that was
allegedly, that was still just a ballistic missile, but
of
one
normal?
of the newer ones.
Holy shit, it was moving quick.
Yep,
Ooh.
that fluid,
boom, and all those in league with imperialism.
It made a
bureaucrats.
It made a massive damage.
The reactionary section of the intelligentsia attached to them.
Right, and of course, Iran should immediately proceed with acquiring a nuclear weapon, as John Mearsheimer says. I'll play the clip below. As soon as they've done that, instant deterrence is established, and the U.S. and Israel will halt their project of collapsing the Iranian state and destroying the Iranian nation. The propaganda on all this is actually insane. Think of what the reaction would be if any other state bombed the US, UK, France, Germany, and eliminated the heads of their military forces and scientists, along with many civilians. The Western media and political class is treating this like just some totally normal, average, everyday thing. Yeah, that's fine. What are you so upset for? Totally normal. Okay, fine. Do a few missile hits on buildings again, but that's it. Nothing beyond that. That would be clearly insanely provocative. By the way, they're not even saying that. They're not even hysterically denouncing the strikes on the military infrastructure beyond the pale. Israel has the right to defend itself. It's absolutely fucking insane. Just do the simple test. What would the U.S. do if the exact same thing was done to them by Russia or China? What would the UK, France, Germany do? The U.S. and Israel launched an all-out total war on Iran. Anyone who's downplaying this fact is deliberately lying. They're deliberately fabricating propaganda to launder the war and further it and ensure it leads to what I said it will if Iran does not take the appropriate response immediately. And here's the Mearsheimer clip. I'll play a little bit of this.
I think there's no question that a nuclear-armed Iran would bring stability to the region because nuclear weapons are weapons of peace. They're weapons of deterrence. They have hardly any offensive capability at all. And if Iran had a nuclear deterrent, there's no way that the United States or Israel, for that matter, would be threatening to attack Iran now. In the same way that if Saddam had had nuclear weapons in 2003, the United States would not have invaded Iraq. And if Libya had nuclear weapons in 2011, the United States would not have gone to war against Libya. So I think that if you had a Middle East where other states besides Israel, and this of course includes Iran, had a nuclear deterrent, it would be a more peaceful region. Well, it's possible there'll be some proliferation. I wouldn't bet against the fact that maybe Turkey or Saudi Arabia would acquire nuclear weapons, but people have been predicting widespread proliferation for decades now, and it's never happened. But I think there are two reasons that it wouldn't happen. One is that the Iranians would not be able to blackmail anybody in the neighborhood with their nuclear weapons. We've created this myth in this country over the past few years in talking about Iran that any country that acquires nuclear weapons can blackmail other countries or use those nuclear weapons for offensive purposes. We have a lot of theory and a huge amount of empirical evidence, 67 years now, which show that no country with nuclear weapons can blackmail another country as long as somebody is protecting that country or it has its own nuclear weapons. And this leads to the second reason. The United States is going to extend its nuclear umbrella over Saudi Arabia and over Turkey, the way it extended it over Germany and Japan during the Cold War. And we will make it perfectly clear to the Iranians that they cannot blackmail anybody. So there'll be no great incentive for Turkey or for Saudi Arabia to acquire nuclear weapons.
And as you know, when you're involved in contact sports, it can be very dangerous. And so they live in a dangerous world. And on top of that, nuclear weapons are the ultimate deterrent, right? It doesn't get any better than nuclear weapons. And of course, this is why states pursue nuclear weapons. I believe that if Iran had nuclear weapons, the United States and Israel would not be threatening to attack Iran. You don't attack a country that has nuclear weapons and put its survival at risk. So I think if Iran were to get nuclear weapons, the United States and and Israel would back off and stop threatening them. Then there's always the case of Libya. You remember Colonel Gaddafi? We told Colonel Gaddafi that if he gave up his nuclear weapons program, his weapons of mass destruction programs, that we would leave him alone. You know what happened to Colonel Gaddafi? He's now 6 feet under, and we helped put him 6 feet under. If I were Colonel Gaddafi, I would have developed nuclear weapons. North Korea?
What difference does it make?
We got him.
North Korea is going to give up its nuclear weapons? I just don't understand the charade that we engage in, where we're constantly acting as if North Korea is going to give up its nuclear weapons. They'd be nuts to give up their nuclear weapons. Oh, by the way, do you see any evidence the United States is giving up its nuclear weapons? Is Israel giving up its nuclear weapons? Is Britain giving up its nuclear weapons? Is India, Pakistan? Of course they're not. Why not? Because nuclear weapons are the ultimate deterrent. In the case of Israel, it's by far the most powerful military in the Middle East at the conventional level. Does it really need nuclear weapons? You could argue it doesn't, but they're not giving them up, nor is Uncle Sam. Uncle Sam is by far the most powerful state on the planet in terms of its conventional forces. It has never shown an iota of interest in giving up its nuclear weapons. In fact, it's going to modernize its nuclear deterrent. So all I'm saying here is there are really powerful incentives for a country living in a dangerous neighborhood that has the United States and Israel out there with their gun sights on you to get nuclear weapons.
Yep. Professor John
also,
Mearsheimer.
I love just the Zoom recording.
Yes.
I love just that.
He does Zoom calls.
You know?
And let's not forget
Right.
that the UK is also complicit and guilty of war crimes in supporting all of this attacks on a sovereign country. Again, going back to Matt Kennard, who's been chasing the spy flights and other flights that support Israel out of RAF Akrotiri, okay, in Cyprus. That is a base that the UK holds, that they use to refuel and run spy flights out of. But he said as of that was yesterday morning, 6:04 a.m. All right, Eastern. This morning at 8:51 a.m., Keir Starmer sent a UK military Voyager KC-3, that's a tanker, air-to-air refueling plane from the UK base on Cyprus. It flew over Lebanon, Israel, and Syria before turning off its transponder over Iraq. I wonder why it did that. Because it was flying in the direction of Iran, and it was in the sky at that moment. Huh. What?
Okay, so it's a air tanker?
And it's a refueler for other aircraft. Yeah.
Right. That's my point.
Weird.
Was that this is for, but we don't see any other aircraft?
We don't, but we know that drones were sent. We know that all kinds of aircraft were sent. Again, we don't know.
I mean, the drones wouldn't need refueling.
No, they wouldn't.
This is for like
spy flights,
long range flying,
long range spy flights and drone flights. Because not all the drones are attack drones. Some of them are recon drones that fly high up.
Yeah.
All right. That is this portion.
Do a barrel roll.
The sneak attack on Iran is this portion of the Fuck Israel segment that we had for tonight. So if you're able to, I'm going to break there and thank all of these incredible supporters with our Wall of Fame from Indie News Network. If you're watching for the first time over on Substack, welcome. Thank you so much for checking this out. These are the incredible people that support our network. We are totally user-funded. We don't take sponsorships. We don't do ad reads. And again, all we have is you. These are the incredible people that have done that already. The ways to support our network are Cash App, $, Indie News Network, ko-fi.com/Indie News Network, paypal.me/Indie News Network. And you can do it over at innnewsletter.com and indiemediatoday.com over at Substack. And then we have our own self-host. Thank you.
Substack newsletter near you.
Yep. You're welcome. You're welcome.
I have to say that. I love you all. Keep independent media free and support independent media because we need it more than ever, fam. Thanks.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye, Israel.
Mwah. Ciao, baby.
No! We just fucking lost the stream.
I
guess this isn't such an awful place. Is that what you want?